Welcome to the Higher Ed Geek Podcast, where we explore the impact of EdTech on the student experience with engaging, fun, and relevant conversations that honor the wide range of work happening all across the higher ed ecosystem. I'm your host, Dustin Ramsdell. I've been working in and around higher ed for the past decade, focused on student support and digital experience. Join me every week for discussions with some of the best minds in education technology. We'll be bringing you their perspectives on how digital transformation is reshaping the way we recruit, engage, and graduate learners. You'll hear firsthand accounts of how institutional leaders are developing their strategy, as well as get deeper on the stories of how these EdTech tools are being built to foster better student outcomes. With that, let's get to today's episode.
Welcome, everyone, for our very first bonus episode recorded live here at Illumia Momentum in beautiful Nashville. This is the first interview of several that we'll do here at the conference, so definitely stay tuned for a lot more great conversations to come your way. But we're kicking things off with Zach from Ellucian. If you want to briefly introduce yourself and your role to our audience here, and then we'll get into more of our conversation.
Thank you, Dustin. I really appreciate you having me here today. And being at Illumia Momentum is a great show to meet a lot of our partners. What I do at Ellucian is really focus on our strategic partner relationships. What does that mean? And what does that mean in higher education? It's really, how do I work with companies to create better integrations, better relationships, and how can I support them to kind of append or support our existing ERP ecosystem?
Yeah, and I think it is like, we're doing this on the show floor, and I was walking during the welcome reception last night and just seeing one, there's a lot of people here. Two, there's a lot of different partners and different folks that just sort of intersect in different ways with what was formerly Transact Seaboard, what is now Illumia. So I think it is just exciting seeing that idea of okay, you kind of buy into an ecosystem, the ways that sort of everything can kind of work better together, everything. But from your perspective, why is ERP integration critical for a connected campus ecosystem? Because I think, again, there's just a lot of different facets of different kind of parts of the digital infrastructure here for a higher ed institution. Why is ERP integration specifically critical for kind of the whole connected campus?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting and integral point within the higher education ecosystem. When you think about ERP, you're really thinking about the lifeblood of data within that institution. So students, administrators, everyone within the ecosystem really looks at the ERP as the system of truth. And within Ellucian Student, we want to make sure that we have an effective pathway to be able to support different partners. And when we think about a consumable architecture of where you really are focused on API integration and having the best of breed solutions, the ERP manages the data, but it has to pull that data from other systems. And without those, tight integrated connection and a consumable architecture that allows institutions to do more with the systems that they have, it really is hard for them to get the best of breed out of the solutions that they do have.
Yeah, and I guess just a quick follow-up to confirm my understanding is that idea of you have kind of your repository of all of your students in the ERP, and then the idea of you're bringing in various kind of points of sale, payment points, so kind of where transactions are happening and access and all that. You can make, again, all of those work better together to know who, who's doing what, when, and how, and what, So I guess we could just speak to that, I guess, of that idea of the data points of because again, you could maybe have them all being separate and working okay, but the idea of them working better together and any sort of, I guess, examples or reflections on that.
Yeah, this is part of the overall organizational modernization view within higher education. They've built systems and they have a lot of really great processes and systems in place, but they're often siloed or not effectively integrated. And what we see in this kind of modernization world is that students don't really care about systems, they care about experiences. And when you think about the data that goes behind that student, it really is kind of critical for them to have that, insight that I know it's overused, but a data-driven decision-making process for administrators, but really for them to understand a student where they are in that pathway. And if it's clarity on their financial situation that they might have with Illumia, if it's, integration with their payment system, if it's integration with their card system that helps them get access to their room, how do you really have kind of a continuous data set that allows them to understand where they are in the process, what they need to do, and what potential shortcomings they might have that impact them from graduating?
Yeah, because I think it's what I've seen is like, looking at different solutions, like it works great for everyone. That idea of like, okay, I can, have everything I need to make data-driven decisions as a staff member, kind of across the gamut. But then, yeah, like students, they don't want to have to download like a bunch of different apps or whatever, and like that, like they care about convenience and kind of, just the idea of even like, in my mind, like having options or backups, whatever, because it could be like, okay, yeah, we'll give you an ID card, like a physical one, keep that in wallet, but like you can, use, your phone to get into the dining hall or whatever. Like, so I think building the infrastructure that kind of facilitates that, or like, because I think like, be recording here, it's like, yeah, I'm recording like on my computer and my,
Absolutely.
mixer. So like that idea of like it not just being like one way, this is the way we do it, and it works maybe great for us as the institution, not so great for the student. And those sort of things. So.
Yeah, and what we really want to focus on is as everybody knows now, there's a million ways you can log in and assign, and you've got multiple different applications. Is that always the best experience for you as an end user of the education system or any system? No. So how do you create some better kind of continuity between applications, between systems? And that's why, I at Ellucian really focus on how do we enable our strategic partners to create better pathways and better integration that just creates a better experience for every stakeholder of the higher education ecosystem.
Well, and I guess sort of pivoting a little bit, because I think, yeah, here, it's a lot of various sort of, vendors and partners and, everybody who's kind of working together. Like, from your point of view, like, how does, your collaborations with all these other companies and stuff, like, help institutions kind of no matter where they are in sort of their modernization journey? Because I can imagine someone like coming into this where they're like, all this looks great, but I don't know, I'm kind of like daunted or overwhelmed by the notion of like, all these things that I could or should or, have sort of all in my ecosystem. So that idea that like knowing that a lot of institutions are at different places with this kind of work, how do your sort of collaboration kind of help people along in that journey wherever they are?
Yeah, and I think that's a really kind of critical path is the key decision makers around what they're utilizing and how they're utilizing it to move the institution forward. So, there are a lot of great systems outside, and obviously Ellucian and Ellucian Student has a broad scope of functionality, but there's a lot of things that we don't do. But when you invest in these ecosystems and you invest in tools, how do you know that they're going to effectively talk to each other? How do you know they're effectively going to communicate? And how are you going to make sure that you get the most out of those investments? We want to move away from this siloed ecosystem and really focus on deeper integrations, deeper experiences, and kind of a really being able to surface the information that matters to students, that matters to administrators, and creating a cohesive environment. So part of it within every institution is what's working for you. What are the key kind of lifeblood of that institution from a system perspective? And then really, how is it supporting students or how is it supporting your staff to get the most out of what they're trying to accomplish within that ecosystem? So it is really being a little introspective and then looking at what that future state might look like for the institution.
Yeah, I guess that is that idea of like, that is the example of like, an institution being at any point in sort of their modernization journey is it might be like, okay, maybe you've got some stuff that works great for you. We can maybe, again, make sure it kind of works better together with what other tools and things you might want or need to bring on. And I guess as like a quick follow-up to that, I guess, for you being here and fostering a lot of like kind of strategic partnerships with, other organizations that are here, is it that idea that you are in a great place because it's like, hey, we work really great with this thing. If you need a solution, sort of the, the access area or something for the dining hall, like, is that sometimes how the conversations go with like institutional leaders?
Yeah, absolutely. So our focus, both on the partnership side and the R&D side within Ellucian is that how do we create a better ecosystem, a more consumable architecture that allows for third parties to effectively integrate. And what we've spent a lot of time on an investment on over the last couple of years, both on R&D and on the partnership team, is how do we certify and validate these integrations for institutions so that they know they're going to work. We worked, extensively with Illumia, formerly Transact. It's going to be tough for me to move over all that quickly, but to make sure that they've got a solution that's validated and verified that will support that modernization path. And what we see with a lot of institutions is that they're on a continuum as it relates to that transformation and that modernization path. We've got organizations that are focused on really on stability. How do they get a core baseline set of systems that address their needs and provide some stability? And then you have some that are really looking at optimization. how are they making sure that these systems work together more effectively and create a better cohesive delivery? And once again, it goes back to the student, and it's not just about systems, but around the experience of that student. And then finally, the folks that are really doing high-level digital transformation and moving beyond what's currently available, what the future state might be. And that future state is really kind of that connected campus, that connected ecosystem where everything from somebody clicking in their door or using their campus card to buy food, to paying their tuition, to registering for classes, to getting their transcript is all kind of a continuum, and provides that insight to that student and the administrators to understand more effectively.
Yeah, and I think too, like, it's different things that are here, and I think in the conversations we'll certainly have in some of the episodes here, but like, I mean, there's like people here who are doing, facial recognition for access. So that's maybe like more of a future-oriented solution, but then, stuff where it is sort of like just Bluetooth or, whatever else where it's just making it that much better or apply in more cases. And then, that idea of around like, payments is huge because it impacts so much stuff around, the kind of bigger pieces around tuition, but just the day-to-day, buying the cup of coffee or, whatever else. The idea of like the optionality too of like, okay, if you want to pay for this with Apple Pay or whatever, like we're going to embed all these things kind of across it versus just being, you only have that over here. You can't do that over here. Again, that's like students. It's like, shouldn't it just be able to do it everywhere? Isn't it just like the institution? It's not like, well, actually that's dining services. And actually this is like residence life or whatever else. I think it's like, I think the way you broke it down makes a lot of sense of just sometimes where it's like, okay, we need to like get away from like on-prem and just get to kind of a stable state, or if we're really trying to move more towards, again, that sort of apex of like full digital transformation and like a super, fluid, seamless kind of connected ecosystem. And I think, you're kind of seeing a lot of that here of like folks kind of helping with whatever makes the most sense of like, because I think too, it's even the dynamics, and I don't know if you have sort of a brief follow-up or thoughts on this of like, institutions that may be investing more in sort of their online education ecosystem versus their like physical spaces. Like obviously those are vastly different needs and stuff. So I don't know if there's any quick reflections on those sort of conversations where institutions are like, wow, we're experiencing a lot of growth in the online area. That obviously has a lot of implications for how we change access and security and preventing fraud or, whatever it might be.
Yeah, I mean, it's super critical that institutions understand their student population and understand what's driving success within that student population. And part of it's really understanding the financial and the output, the outcomes that come from these investments. So if they're investing in online education, but it's not delivering the kind of the graduation, on-time graduation that they like to see, or they're not getting the kind of the outputs that they want, they really have to look at, again, the data, the ecosystem to understand what those investments are to be successful. And having kind of cohesive and longitudinal data that really allows them to understand what's worked, why it's worked, what that student population is, and then from like a macro level, what's going on within their community. We know higher education's faced with more challenges than they've ever been faced before with enrollment, financial requirements for students, and making the right decisions on a programmatic basis is really the lifeblood of institutions that are being successful right now. How are they investing and what are they investing in to meet their students where they are, to drive outcomes that they really want to see?
Yeah. And I guess it makes me think of just the way that you framed it. Like it could be like, okay, on ground, maybe we're not seeing the growth that we used to, whatever, but like things are stable, things are working. Yeah. Like retention, graduation rates are like, in a normal kind of range, like we're good with that. But then it's like, okay, we are seeing more growth in online, but then like some of the other metrics aren't there of like, student satisfaction, retention, graduation. It's like, okay, where are sort of the bumps in the road? Is it around registration? Is it around transactions or, payments? Is it around, getting access to different systems when it's not like, on the campus Wi-Fi or whatever, like different things like that. So I guess I'll use that, just segueing to my next to last question here. What are you seeing on the horizon for your work? Like what, if it's actual things that you're sort of like working on or just what you're kind of anticipating in the near future?
So there's so many things that we're doing, and I can talk about AI and the utilization of data. I can talk about the kind of the integrated campus. But what I really see is the fundamental kind of transformation these institutions are going to. And it is, a recognition from these institutions around what systems that they're utilizing, how they're utilizing, and then what are the kind of the best practices. One of the great things about higher education is that they share ideas readily. There's a lot of people that we work with that have been kind of tip of the spear and doing some of that digital transformation work. And we're seeing more and more institutions kind of follow their lead and learn from what they did, learn from the challenges and the successes they had to create that more digitally, focused, integrated campus. And what we want to focus on from an architecture and around Ellucian student of a kind of a unified student platform is how do we create a better integration pathway, a better experience, and a better leverage of the existing investments they've made to make sure that it's cohesive and provides kind of a continuum, that they're not just thinking about siloed systems, they're not just thinking about systems in general, but overarchingly the student, faculty, administrator experience and how they can improve that to do more with less, to drive, new insights on data with AI, to really, expand and improve the student experience and the future investments of the institution.
It is an idea of without you doing the work that you do, it's either institutions having to go without of just sort of we can't integrate these things or whatever, or they have to invest additional time, resources, whatever, to be we kind of jerry-rigged a back-end sort of connection to get these things to work. And, that's good on them for doing that, but it's also where it's they just pushed a update and now it just ruined everything or whatever. So the idea of you being very diligent about just kind of across the board, the sort of demands, the needs, the trends and things that you're seeing, and making sure that you are enabling, the kind of, the whole tech stack of an institution to just, work better together. But we will wrap up. I'll give you the last word. We'll do this with every guest here. Advice that you would give right now to other higher ed leaders navigating this moment.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. We've done so much work as an organization to try to incorporate the best practices and the best thoughts of the leaders we work with, from our educational advisory board, our partner advisory board, to really understand what these institutions are going through. And what we suggest is that they talk to other institutions. They understand that, what's purpose built for them, what works for them, and how do they, how other institutions have been successful, and what's kind of the roadmap for success. Not every institution is the same. We know the unique challenges that individual states as well as individual institutions have, from public to private and everywhere in between. But understanding what those key things are, try to look at what are the key systems that drive your success, and how does that relate specifically to the educational outcomes you're looking to obtain. And I think that trying to boil it down into some key deliverables and looking at purpose-built, education-specific solutions that folks that know what you're doing and know what you're trying to accomplish can be, really transformational in what your future state of your organization is.
Yeah, I think that's a great bit of advice, because I think, that idea of knowing, the goal that you're aiming for, because it is just a lot of people talk sort of abstractly about digital transformation, and we can help you achieve it or whatever. It's but how though? And that idea of knowing where, you need to kind of dedicate your focus, your limited time and resources to know this is what's going to, kind of move the needle in the ways that we need to. Just being kind of clear-eyed about that. And I think, just really appreciate you taking some time here, sharing all you did, for all the work that you do, and with ways to connect with you and Ellucian in the episode description. But just really good talking to you.
Thanks so much, Dustin. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Higher Ed Geek podcast. This show is a proud member of the Enrollify Network, home to Higher Ed's largest collection of podcasts. Enrollify is where higher ed goes to grow. So be sure to check out our other podcasts, webinars, video clips, blogs, and more. Visit Enrollify.org and subscribe for all the latest details and content drops directly to your inbox. Enrollify is brought to you by Element 451, the digital workforce platform for higher ed. Learn more at element451.com.